Hi, and welcome to this week's Nugget. Well, we're going to begin a series on the minor prophets. And it's very interesting to me because most Christians, when you ask them how many minor prophets are there, they're not quite sure. They sometimes guess at the answer. Now, for those who know, well, there's 12 minor prophets, if you ask them, well, who are they? Most Christians, again, can't tell me each one by name. And what that tells us is if you don't know who the minor prophets are, then how do you know the message? And if you don't know the message, then how do you apply God's word? And understand the minor prophets, which begin in Hosea and they go all the way to the end of the Old Testament with the book of Malachi. If you were to take a Bible and hold that part in your hand, you're holding almost 6% of the Bible in your hand. I say almost 6% because it's 5.5% page-wise, but content-wise, but it's copied and quoted in other parts of the book, especially the New Testament. So if you take out the minor prophets, you'd be taking out part of the New Testament as well. So the whole point is, it's a very important series that we're going to begin to understand how much of God's word we need to apply. Now, with that said, the first minor prophet is Hosea. And in chapter 1, Hosea is called to do a very unique thing. He's called to get married and to have children, but his family becomes an object lesson. It becomes an object lesson that parallels Israel's relationship with God. And as we get into the story of Hosea, you'll see that his wife becomes an adulteress. And they have children, and the children are giving names that are not very flattering. In fact, they kind of go against God. That's all part of what God's plan is, to reveal the sin and the sin nature that Israel's having. Now, we can't go into much detail because of a small nugget like this, but Israel as a nation is a divided nation. You have Israel, which would be the northern part, the 10 tribes. You have Judah, the southern 2 tribes. In Israel, the northern part is where Hosea is preaching. And they've taken God out of their lives. They have replaced God. They have replaced the things of God. The tribe of Levi, the priests of Levi have been taken out, and other priests have been put in, not ones that God has ordained. And how many times in our lives do we take things away from God, take godly things out of our lives and replace it with hobbies and habits and time and just things about us? And we really put ourselves there and not worshiping God, but we're worshiping ourselves. So your nugget this week is to really look at your lives and really focus on, what are you doing? Everything God has given you, are you giving it back to God? Is God the Lord and Master of your life? The message through Hosea really, as it begins, is to make God who God is. And the promise comes, there's a restoration, there's a blessing, there's a future hope in store for each believer. We are to live today for that day when we receive that future hope and that future blessing. But we need to stop right now and look at our lives and say, is God really the Lord and Master of our lives? So again, the nugget, to look at your schedule, look at your time, look at your resources, look at everything God has given you. And does he really have first place in your life? And as you take the time this week to do that, we'll move on next week as we move into Hosea chapter 2, and then so on and so forth. And we will have a fun time with this series called The Minor Prophets. So stay tuned. There's a lot more to come. Between now and the next time we get back together, God bless you. Have a wonderful time, and we'll see you next week. Take care.